Coming to you live from Adam and Ditto, it's the Dragonite Show, featuring Josh.
Hello and welcome to the Dragonite Show. I'm your host, Don. Today we have a very interesting topic to discuss about a recent rumor with strong implications about the types for the final evolutions of the Gen 7 starters. With me here today, I have Josh, who came across a video on Go Nintendo where someone discovered a supposed leak from the Japanese Pokemon website. Why don't you go ahead and briefly explain what that guy found?
Okay, I'll do that, Don. Thank you for the introduction. So, on the actual Pokemon website, PD Winall discovered that under the starters page, each of their types had a number associated with them. Now, that's interesting because they only have the types for the starters, and 2 additional types, those types being ground and fighting. Now, what's most interesting is the order of these images. So, you start off with Rowlet's grass, flying, then it goes into ground, which we'll touch on in a little bit, then fire, then water, and then fighting. So, out of all those, you would assume ground and fighting don't fit. Now, not all of the types are up there yet. And if all of the types had files on the website, you wouldn't get an error when putting in icon 07 and icon 8 and so on and so forth. Other types would fill those voids. Because it lists only these types, it's a very good indicator of what the starter's final forms types might be.
Yeah. So that brings us to our discussion about what could be the types for the final evolutions of each starter. Rowlet can potentially be grass ground, Litten can potentially be just fire, and finally, Popplio could just be water fighting. And for future reference, we will refer to these final forms as Roletasaur, Litazard, and Poppliotoise, respectively.
Yes. So, we figure if Poppliotoise is water/fighting, the only other Pokemon with that type as of right now are Poliwrath and Keldeo. If Roletasaur's type becomes grass/ground, the only other Pokemon with that type is Torterra.
Let's just talk about one of the starters for now. So let's start off with Litazard, because it's just basic fire, you know.
Right. It's just a fire type. It would have all the same weaknesses fire would. It's nothing really special. What would be unique would be like its hidden abilities, its moves. Hopefully it has more of a diverse move pool than Typhlosion does, because that is one god-awful move pool.
Yeah.
Hopefully the design looks cool. I'm assuming it's going to be a tiger just because, you know, they've been following the Chinese zodiac and it fits. It's a cat.
You brought up the fact that Typhlosion is not very good competitively, and that's also, I want to say, pretty true of Torterra for our friend Roletasaur. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like it wouldn't be right for those other starters to just have starters now that are better than those, if that makes any sense. So
basically just not better versions of it. I agree.
I think it would be kind of, not really bad, but like it would be unfortunate for those Pokemon. They could just, you know, instead buff those Pokemon, Typhlosion and Torterra, as opposed to coming out with a new Pokemon that fulfills its role better.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about Torterra, but definitely Typhlosion, all they really need to do is add to its move pool, because that is literally the only thing holding it back. It has Charizard stats, and if they made a mega version of Typhlosion, which I'm not pushing for, you know, it would be as good as Charizard competitively, which is pretty good.
As of right now, none of the second gen has megas, right?
Yeah, none of the second gen starters have mega evolutions. Neither does anything from 4th, 5th, or 6th gen.
Okay, let's keep it that way. I mean, it would be nice to make some of those weaker Pokemon that are still super cool be more competitively viable, but it kind of irks me that they need to be a Mega to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said already in the last Dragonite show, I do want regular evolutions for older Pokemon. Like, I really want to see a Farfetch'd. I want to see a Shuckle Mega Evolution where it doubles its defenses.
I mean, see, the thing is, These are starters, so they already have like 3 evolutions. They have the
Right.
first one, second one, and third one. So you can't really just be like, "Hey, here's the 4th Evo for Typhlosion. He's got even more fire on his back."
Yeah.
You can't
Well, I
really do
mean,
that.
they
You
did
could
it.
totally do that for a Mega though. A Mega
Mhm.
Typhlosion with more fire on his back. That's totally okay.
Yeah.
Apparently, you know.
Honestly, like at this point, just because first and third gen have mega forms, I think they should just make megas for all the other starters, just to be fair.
Yeah. That is true. They should have megas. It should be pretty obvious that they are hoarding the megas for the starters. They aren't just gonna
Hmm.
give us the 5th gen ones
Right.
already.
Yeah, I could see that. But still, like if they only made megas for starters for, this generation, I'd be okay with that. Even if it included like the new guys.
Yeah. But that's beside the point. We're here to talk about
Yeah,
what could be
the rumors.
what could be the final types for the starters in Gen 7. With Littlezard, what do you think the hidden ability for that Pokemon would be?
That's actually a really good question.
Well, actually, first let's I don't know, take a stab at like what kind of stat thing it'd be good at. Like if it's like defensive or it's like a special attacker or a physical attacker. I personally feel like it should be a special attacker, but then we had Delphox before, just last gen. That was a special
Hmm.
attacker. Not too good one, but it still was a special attacker. But hey, maybe it will compensate for the fact that Blaziken, Infernape, and Tepig are all firefighting
Physical
physical
attackers.
attackers. You know,
Yeah.
I want to
Um.
say maybe it's a special attacker. What do you
Mhm.
think would be Litizard's hidden ability? What would be a good one for just a pure fire type?
Well, I mean, you always have like solar power.
Charizard had solar power.
Hmm. And Typhlosion had,
Flash fire.
yes, flash fire. Thank you. I couldn't think of the ability's name.
And then Blaziken had speed boost.
Yep, because it's a chicken.
Infernape had Iron Fist.
Hmm. Makes sense because it's a fighting type.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Embor had reckless, but both Tepig and Pignite had thick fat instead,
Hmm.
which didn't really help it too much.
Mm-hmm. And that could be the same thing for this generation too. The first 2 forms could have a different hidden ability than the final form. And that could be true of Rowlet, especially. Rowlet
Hmm.
could potentially be grass ground, so it could have a totally different hidden ability from its first and second forms.
It could have levitate to make up for the fact that it's no longer flying type.
Oh, yeah. That is also true.
Hmm. Delphox had magician. That was the name of.
So, if it isn't any of those, what do you think would be a
Mhm.
good one for a fire type?
Just based on the fact that the lore they gave him was like, oh, its fur could catch on fire at any moment. That's why it licks it up to like spit out fireballs, or his fur is very combustible. I could see like flame body or something like that. I mean, if they make him a physical attacker, I would rather this ability if it had tough claws because it's a cat.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it could be a number of things. It could have nothing to do with its type at all. Just as long as it doesn't have like defeatist or something like that, an ability that's horrible.
But I think you do bring up a interesting thing. Like, what if it did have something like tough claws because it's a cat?
Hmm.
That
I
does
mean,
make
it
a lot
could
of
have
like.
absolutely nothing to do with it being a cat.
That's true.
For all we know, it could have like serene grace or some random ability.
That is true. You know, like what does contrary have anything to do with superior?
Right.
There isn't much to say about Litizard. Just fire.
Yeah.
Oh, I should say that for each of these types, they still have a 2 times weakness to each other. So it's still that
Right.
same
Triangle.
triangle of water beats fire,
Fire.
fire beats
Fire.
grass. Wait, what?
No, that's what I was saying. Fire
Yeah,
beats grass,
yeah,
and then grass beats water.
yeah. So
Sorry,
that's
I kind
still
of
2 times weakness all around for that. I think a lot of people were hoping that it would be sort of canceling, like there's the second type would cancel out the other type, like it would be like a reverse triangle for their secondary
Right.
type. But I don't know if they are ever gonna do that.
Hey man, just as long as fire's not fighting again,
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
yeah. So speaking of water fighting, you mentioned that the only Pokemon that have that typing are Poliwrath and Keldeo.
Yep,
And
that's right.
it'd be kind of nice to have a Pokemon that is not legendary, that is water fighting, and is viable. Because Poliwrath kind of sucks.
Yeah, I hate to say it because of how much I love Poliwrath, and well, I mean I love Politoed too. But yeah, they're not that good.
I feel like this is another situation of what we were talking about before. That it's possibly going to be a better version of another Pokemon. And I don't want it to be
Yeah.
that way. I want Poliwrath to be good, obviously.
Hmm.
And it could be good for totally different reasons, you know?
Yeah. So in the end, it all boils down to what these things' abilities are, like what its hidden ability is, because we know it's Torrent as its regular ability,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean it could work differently from Poliwrath. Poliwrath has both Water Absorb and Damp, but it also has Swift Swim as its hidden ability. Again, it does depend on what its hidden ability is. It could be a brand new ability for all we know.
Right. They could come up with new moves, new abilities, and all sorts of new stuff. It's a new generation, you know? They could do whatever the fuck they want. They could
Yeah,
even.
it's a whole new world
Yeah.
we live in.
They
It's
could
a whole
even
new world to see.
they could even change like existing rules and stuff like that.
But you still gotta catch 'em all.
Okay. I was gonna say, what hidden ability do you think a water fighting type would want? You know?
See, that's a good question. I mean, Drizzle is just good for anyone,
Right.
especially any rain dance team. Even with the nerf, it's still pretty good. Oh,
It also kind of has to depend on what its moves are. You know, like
right.
if it had Mach Punch, it would be nice to have Technician.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm assuming it would have to. The ability would have to deal more with its water type rather than its fighting type. But then again, we know nothing so
Yeah.
far. Greninja had Protean, which is just amazing, but it doesn't necessarily need to have it. Each starter had a different hidden ability, which is good.
That is
For
true.
example, Blastoise had Rain Dish, which under rain heals itself by 1/16, so it's free leftovers.
So are you
For
saying?
Alligator,
Hold on. Are you saying that with this next generation, they can't have a hidden ability that a previous starter
no,
had?
I'm not saying that. No, 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 not at all.
Okay.
It could have, the creators wanted it to, but like I'm just stating that each starter has so far had different hidden abilities rather than like repeating Torrent as a hidden ability, which would be kind of bad. Um, but like I could see it having something like for Alligator's Sheer Force, which for Alligator is just water type, so that kind of comes out of nowhere. Swampert's is damp, which that's not that bad, but it really only works against explosion and self-destruct, so it's kind of pointless. Empoleon's was Defiant, which attack is raised by 2 stages once its stats are lowered, so that's kind of out of nowhere. It has nothing to do with water. My main point is, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I might as well at this point. Samurott had Shell Armor, which, makes sense for it.
Yeah.
And like I said, Greninja had Protean, which, because it's a frog, it also makes sense for it. It is also worth noting that Protean was a brand new ability for 6th gen for Greninja. Not just for Greninja, but just because of what Poplio is, I could see them making maybe like an ability that powers up bubble type moves. So like Bubble and Bubble Beam would get a boost,
Oh yeah. Like
making Bubble Beam better than Surf,
that'd be
which would be interesting.
that would be interesting for sure. It
But then I would think they would have to come up with more bubble moves. So
like looking at some of the artwork that they have out for Poplio, it does seem to like play around with bubbles. It's like
Mhm.
bouncing on them and doing tricks off of them. Pops them.
Right.
Pop Leo.
Well, I mean, like all three of them, all three of the starters have something interesting to do with their bodies.
Yeah.
Literally, the other two, I almost said Litleo. Litten uses its fur to make the fire because it's flammable, so it's coughing up hairballs.
Mm-hmm.
And Rowlet uses its wings to throw leaves, which is also interesting because, since when do birds have leaves?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some type of bird that does that.
Is there a water type starter with Sap Sipper as their hidden ability?
I know, because I went through all of them.
Because I remember when Mega Swampert became a thing, that
Hmm.
people really wanted Mega Swampert to have Sap Sipper, but it has
Right,
Swift
and that's
Swim
solely because
of its
that's literally
four
just
times weakness to grass.
to grass.
Yeah.
And with the changes to it, I think it like boosts special attack or it heals you. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that could be pretty cool. Sap Sipper on Poplio Toys. And if it's like a
Mhm.
physical attacker, assuming that it probably is one because it's water fighting, like
Mhm.
there's more physical moves for fighting type than there are special. So
Right,
I'm
and it
gonna
also just
guess
raises the attack.
that Poplio is gonna be more of a physical attacker. It'd be
Hmm.
it'd be nice to have Sap Sipper. That way you can raise that attack, and when you like I don't know predict that they use a grass move on you, you know that
Yeah,
would be pretty cool. Um,
although that would be pretty broken against Rowlet. Rowlet just uses a grass move to try and attack it, and it does nothing. It raises its attack. You help it more than hurt it.
you can still use
Of
a
course,
ground
these are
move.
hidden abilities, so.
You can still use a ground move
Yeah,
on them.
that's true. That's true.
Assuming that Roletasaur is going to be grass ground, you can still use a
Hmm.
ground move and then still do
Now,
stab damage. Go ahead.
I think we should go over just why we think it could be grass ground for Roletasaur.
Hmm.
And, personally, like I looked this up before. I'm like, what do owls have to do with the ground that this would be a thing? Apparently there's a type of owl that actually burrows into the ground. It's literally called a burrowing owl.
That's interesting. I've actually
Yeah.
never heard of that before. I was just thinking that this grass flying Pokemon decided to land on the ground and do stuff on the ground,
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, I mean, it is
it's
grass, so it could like plant itself.
yeah, it's oh yeah, that's true. That is true. It plants itself in the ground into a tree.
Hmm. Which means it would probably learn ingrain
Yeah.
or dig.
Well,
Dude, that's actually
we already have a tree Pokemon though. It's called Trevenant.
yeah.
For Turtwig, as it evolves, it becomes a whole continent. So
Hmm. Well, yeah, it's based on the world turtle.
oh
So I don't know. I'm just interested in seeing what these things become. Like I said, I think Litten's going to be a tiger or something along that line, and
I want to say I've
Poplio's going
seen
to be a bigger version of itself.
some pretty cool fan art of like the final evolutions. A lot of people have been doing that, and
Hmm.
I have seen Litten possibly becoming a tiger, and the fan art that I've seen is actually pretty cool, and it makes sense.
Hmm. And I really like that it would be pure fire, and if it's viable, I would really like it.
A lot of people a lot of people really prefer like the dual typing Pokemon, but there are pure type Pokemon, like single type Pokemon that are competitively viable. One
Hmm.
off the top of my head is Mega Manectric. That's just purely electric. So
Yeah.
they can be viable even with just one type. And
Hmm.
again, these things depend on hidden abilities base stat totals, and their move pool. You know, it's not just their typing that matters. And I talked to, or I left a reply to somebody on our previous Dragonite show. He was mentioning that Rowlet will get destroyed by ice types. And so whenever Popplio learns like an ice move, then it's just GG, it's over, you know. I replied to him saying that it really doesn't matter what their final types are. What matters is like in the overall grand scheme of things, their competitive viability really actually depends on a number of factors, not just their typing.
Right.
Which were the ones that I listed before: their moves, their base stats, their hidden ability. You know, so don't just think, oh, Rowlet is going to be 4 times weak to ice, regardless of if it's grass flying or grass ground. There are other Pokemon that are 4 times weak to ice, like Garchomp. Garchomp is still super good and has always been super good. You know, it doesn't really matter that you're 4 times weak to ice.
Right, I agree.
That said, let's talk about Rowletosaur a little bit, because I feel like we haven't talked about him just yet. We talked about Litizard and Poppliotoise already. What do you think would be like a good hidden ability for Rowletosaur?
Oh, for Rowletosaur.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about this before, and because of that weakness, that 4 times weakness, I do think it would be really interesting if they gave him like thick fat, like Mega Venusaur has.
Mm-hmm. And that,
because that would kind of it wouldn't completely negate it, but it would just make it kind of like hurt less.
Right. It would mitigate that weakness by a whole lot. And also mitigate the fire weakness too. And that would be really interesting. It would be really interesting, for sure.
Everybody already loves Rowlet. Why not make him the best out of the 3?
And you brought up Mega Venusaur having thick fat. And to give it to just a more typical third evolution of a Pokemon, you don't have to waste a Mega Stone slot on that Pokemon, you know? To have like sort of a tanky, I don't know if it would be tanky, but say if it is, it sort of fulfills that same role as Venusaur, but without a Mega Stone, if that makes any sense.
I actually have this really strong feeling that Rowlet is going to end up being very tanky. And I think it's just because, you know, if either way, that typing, like that one guy said, it would need to take a hit from ice, regardless of if its hidden ability is or isn't thick fat.
Yeah. And
I think it's going to have pretty good HP as well as defenses.
Yeah, hopefully they don't mess up that, you know. It would be unfortunate if it just like instant dies to ice. It should have
any ice move.
Any ice move even. It should just be, or it should not just get totally shut down by ice moves.
I agree.
There was a thought that I had, but I forgot. Oh, Ground is more like a physically defensive type. And what is Venusaur? More defense or special defense?
Venusaur is more special defense.
Oh, okay. So it could fulfill sort of that defensive role as opposed to Venusaur that like fulfills special defense.
Even Chestnut. Oh, Chestnut has a ton of defense and not much special defense. So, like, grass starters have this kind of bulkiness to them. So I could definitely see Rowlet becoming like very defensive.
Let's take a look at Torterra real quick.
Torterra, from what I remember, was also defensive. Yep, 95 HP, 105 defense, and 85 special defense. So, had better defenses, but its special defense is a little weaker than you would want it to be. So I could see that being the case for Rowlet, having pretty good HP, decent special defense and really good defense.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it might just be a better Torterra.
Yeah, which, I guess I would be okay with.
Yeah, that's okay.
I love
It's okay.
Torterra.
He'll just come out with a Mega Torterra that's gonna be even better.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Even though all the stuff is not set in stone, we haven't had like an official announcement for all these typings for these Pokemon. But it's really hard to argue that these typings are just like random selections on the website,
Right, especially because not all of the types are up there. If all of the types were up there, then yeah, who cares about this? This is, probably BS. But because none of the other types are, and it's only these 7 types,
6
types, excuse me, it's pretty telling.
Yeah. And that being said, the reason why I brought that up again is the fact that Rowlet could possibly no longer be grass flying anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks. Because, like, when has there been, like, a grass flying starter,
Right.
There's already been a grass ground starter. It would be nice to have something that's unique, It's unfortunate that it could potentially just be the same typing that we've had before.
Well, let's talk about the other side of that coin. Yes, this is how it's listed on the website, 1 through 6, ground being 3, and fire being 4, and then fighting being 6th. But, who knows? Maybe they did that because they knew people would look through these. What if Litten is either firefighting or fire ground?
What if it's fire flying, huh?
I'd be alright with that.
No, we already have a fire flying Pokemon, and it's annoying as hell.
It's also cool as hell.
No, it's not.
Wait, are you talking about Talonflame?
Yeah.
I knew it. I don't know, but I do think it's worth mentioning that could be the case. That they could be trying to give us a red herring. I don't think it is, but it is worth discussing that either Litten or Poplio could be different types than what we think they are.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I 100% think that Rowlet is going to end up being grass and ground rather than grass and flying. And I think, like we said, Poplio is going to be water fighting, and then Litten's just going to be fire. And I'm okay with that. Just as long, like I said, and I'm going to keep saying this every single time, just as long as we don't have another firefighting Pokemon, I'll be okay.
I guess. What if next gen we're going to get another grass ground? And then the gen after that, man.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think this is just because they saw a burrowing owl, and decided they wanted to do that.
That's fine. I mean, Game Freak is free to do whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, they're not owned by Nintendo. They're their own independent company, within reason.
Yeah.
But the Pokemon Company, on the other hand, that is Nintendo.
Aside from that, is there anything else that is there to talk about? About what these supposed typings could be? For Popliotois and Roletasar and Lidazard?
Not really. I mean, I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head that this website could mean nothing. This website could mean everything.
Yeah.
It's all just speculation. Go on.
It's just a pretty strong argument. Pretty strong
evidence, whatever you would want to call it.
It has a pretty strong basis for being real, They have a certain file name, like naming convention, and the way that it's structured, it seems like Rowlet's going to be grass ground, Litten's going to be just fire, and Poplio is just going to be water fighting. And to be honest, I'm like you said, I'm a-okay with that. That is perfectly fine. I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with it. I'm hoping that each of them are competitively viable.
Hmm.
I think we've pretty much exhausted what we could do with these hypothetical types for these final evolutions. We talked about, what they're weak to and what Pokemon are similar to those, like what existing Pokemon that we already have right now that are similar.
Hmm.
And we also talked about like hidden abilities that would be cool to see on these Pokemon. Do you have anything else to add, Josh?
Not really. I mean, like you said, we pretty much exhausted everything. But at this point, everything's all speculation, and we're in
Right,
wait and see mode.
right.
So,
Of course. Yeah. There should be a disclaimer that this is all speculation, just rumors, We're not saying that they are, in fact, grass ground, water fighting, and pure fire. We're not saying any of that, you know. We're just like, if it's like this, then it'd be cool to see this. Let us know
right.
what you guys think in the comments. We had a lot of people in the comments of our last show bring up some interesting points, and I replied to those. And I generally try to reply to most comments. Feel free to leave us a like, leave us a comment, and share the video, and
Maybe subscribe.
maybe subscribe. We'll catch you later. See you next time
Yeah.
on the Dragonite Show.
On the Dragonite Show. Starring Don.
Starring Don, featuring Josh, and maybe somebody else.